Hey guys, welcome to the 20,000 subscribers special Patreon Q&A. I can't believe now that the channel has 20,000 subscribers. I just started this as a hobby. Thanks to you guys for subscribing. This is all you guys for wanting to watch me for whatever reason that you guys want to watch me. But thanks so much. Thanks to the Patreons who support the channel, because if it wasn't for these Patreon people, the podcast wouldn't be out there for you guys to listen to. So if you listen to the podcast and you enjoy it, thank the people on Patreon that contribute. If you want to get your question answered on video format, just sign up to be a supporter. Just as little as $1 a month can get your question answered here on video. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Francisco from Spain asks, if you were someone to decide to arm a force with any Mauser rifle variant and any configuration a few years before World War II, and that army would go into combat, let's say 3 to 5 years later, which would you pick? For example, Belgian/British expeditionary/Netherlands, maybe some Axis-friendly country with the Mauser export pattern or any other pattern we know in any caliber you choose, whatever. Maybe not be a big surprise to you guys that know it, but I think the Brazilian 1935 carbine, I think is the best Mauser variant ever made. Not only its quality and finish and everything, but just based on the features. The length is great. It's a little bit shorter than a K98K, which I really like. It would be chambered in 7mm as well, which I think is an important sort of combination with the shorter rifle. I think 7mm gives you kind of everything you would need out of an infantry rifle, as well as being kind of heavy enough to suffice in like heavy machine guns, which a lot of countries like Italy, with their 6.5s, they kind of had to have an 8mm for their heavy machine guns. So I think 7mm might be the sweet spot to kind of satisfy both of those things. So overall, it's just a great performing cartridge. I'm a really big fan of 7mm. So yeah, if I had to arm a force, I would definitely do Brazilian 1935 contract carbines. I just think they're really great too. Maybe like the Chilean 1935 as well. Just that 1935 pattern, and I think is very doable. I mean, if you think about the Germans adopted the K98K in 1935, right? So they could have adopted the 1935 export. I think that would have been a great decision. Glad they lost, glad they didn't make that decision, but it would have been a better decision for them. So yeah, I think that's what I would arm pretty much anyone with, a 1935 Mauser. Southpaw says, I have somewhat accidentally stumbled into collecting foreign military rifles made in the U.S. But now that I have acquired a few of them, I would like to adopt that as a general theme for future collecting. That's really cool. I thought about that as well. I currently have a number 3 Lee Enfield P14 made by Remington Eddystone, a number 4 Mark I Star Lee Enfield made by Savage/Stevens, a Mosin Nagant made by Remington, and a 7mm chambered 1897 Remington Rolling Block South American contract rifle. My question is, what else is out there? Are there other foreign rifles made? Are there other foreign military rifles that were made in the U.S.? Yeah. I mean, you could, and I've thought about this exactly. You could just focus on Remington, because Remington fulfilled so many military contracts, even just with the rolling block. Up until World War II, you have the French rolling block. In World War II or World War I, you have the French rolling block in World War I. Then you have, a lot of Mexico and a lot of South American countries adopted rolling blocks in 7mm. Sweden bought Remington made rolling blocks. So you could just collect all the different military contract rolling blocks, but then you get into Remington, then you get I think the next one, from going off what you named here, you probably want a Remington made Berthier rifle, and I think that'd be the biggest thing. Those are kind of pricey. After that, you probably want the 1895, the Winchester 1895. That was for the Russians in World War I, chambered in 7.62 by 54R. I think that might be, and those are really expensive, and that'll take you a while just to find those and save up for them. So those are really cool and collectible, and I think they're pretty sought after and pretty valuable. So I think it'd make a fairly decent investment into your collection as well. So yeah, I would focus on that. Primarily focus on Remington. I think you still need a 1917, so you can get a Remington 1917 or a Winchester Eddystone, whatever 1917 you need. But yeah, it's a really cool thing. I thought about that as well, focusing on that. But I think it's cool. But yeah, Jeffrey D's asked, well, you might have answered this question in a podcast a couple years back, but what would you consider the most underrated and overrated categories of Milsurps as of 2021? These are just my opinions. There's probably a lot of other really valid points that you guys could say in the comments or whatever. But I would say overrated category of Milsurps, I think to me is like Soviet era Mosins. It's just, they're really crude, they're rough. A lot of them that are imported are like the post-war, refurb guys. So like there's not even a whole lot of just pure World War II history there. Maybe if it was like a non-refurb or maybe in a finished captured or something like that, it's got some neat history to it. But I find the Soviet era Mosins just like the most boring. And there's only like a few variants that are kind of out there. So like instead of Soviet era Mosins, I'd say get into something like Finnish Mosins, or maybe just like branch outside of just Soviet, something like that. If you were just focusing on that, not saying it's bad, not saying that it's a bad thing to collect or anything. Like if you do you, if you like Soviet Mosins, I don't know why I like the stuff that I do, so I'm not gonna judge you for liking that stuff. But just to me, I think that's kind of overrated, especially now with the prices that like refurb 9130s are bringing. It's just really high. It's just kind of ridiculous to me. So I would say that's probably the overrated. Underrated, it's going to be the kind of same boring answer that I give a lot of times. I think South American contract Mausers, I think, are just the most underrated Milsurp out there. They're high quality. A lot of them were made in the heyday of Mauser, before World War I. So they're just really high quality guns. Of course, they're Mausers, so they're just great rifles in general. I think the majority of them are chambered in 7mm Mauser, which is a fantastic cartridge. Even like the 7.65 ones, aren't bad. It's hard to go wrong. There's a great plethora of them too. Like you could just focus a collection on South American, Mausers and have just different, crest configurations and different rifles spanning, before the 1898, starting with like 1891s to the, right up until, just before World War II patterns. So I think that's the most underrated. And the prices, I think they're underrated because of the prices that a lot of them go for. Especially like Chilean 1912s and Brazilian 08s and stuff like that. They're pretty common, but the prices are pretty low on them, and they're fantastic rifles. So I would say that really, now there's no like World War II history, and that kind of seems to be like what a lot of American Milsurp collecting is geared towards. Like if it was used in one of the world wars, and if it wasn't, then it's a lot of people don't care for it. But I think that's to me, that's my most underrated one, South American Mausers. Craig asks, can't seem to get this one straight. What is the difference between the Kar 98A and Kar 98AZ? It's a good question. I believe kind of before CN Arsenal made their K98AZ video, the consensus, a lot of people kind of called it the K98A. And still quite a lot of people insist to this day, especially guys like Dieter Storz, who's a German historian. He's a very well-versed guy. A lot of people say that the gun was always the K98A, and that the AZ designation was from whenever the gun was in like development, kind of when it was being prototyped, sort of thing. But then after the development phase, it was called the A, the little A. I mean, people know what you're talking about either way. People, if you say AZ or A, people know what you're talking about. But some collectors, some collectors like to think that using some terms makes them better, or higher class of collector than others by using certain terms. So just know if you say K98AZ to some collectors now, they might look down on you. K98A is probably the most correct way of saying it. Doesn't really matter to me. I mean, either way, I think you know what you're talking about. But I think the K98A, lowercase a, is probably the most correct way. Dan asks, what's your dream Milsurp rifle and pistol? My dream Milsurp rifle is a Gewehr 41M, the 41M that was made by Mauser, which is it's really crazy funky. Ian did a good video on it, but it's basically, I mean, it's pretty mechanically different from the Walther version of G41, but it has a bolt handle sticking off of it. So it's like it's a bolt action optional semi-automatic. It's just over-engineered and just ridiculous, and I just really like it, and I think that's really cool. So that's like my dream one, and I mean it really stinks because I passed. I just didn't have the money at the time, but I passed on one for $4,000 one time, and another time at $5,000, and those are probably my biggest not buying regrets ever. And I'll never find one probably for that good of a deal again. But that's my dream rifle. Dream pistol. Not sure. I think maybe an earlier Bergman pistol, even a not so early one like the Danish Contract. I think those are really neat. They're just really expensive. Like I don't want to pay $3,000 or $4,000, you know, for a Bergman pistol. But those really look cool. Those Danish Contract Bergmans just look really cool. I think that'd be like my next dream pistol because before that, it was the Red 9 here. That was my dream pistol. Since acquiring that, I would say maybe the Bergman now. Dan also asks, have you ever thought about running your Milsurps at a competition of some kind? Yes, I think about that probably every week. The problem is finding the right venue for that. So finding the right amount and kind of of private land, especially with an owner that is cool with that, having that kind of shooting competitions on their land. There's like the hurdles of liability and sort of any kind of legal contracts or whatever that need to be, that need to happen before you have a match like that. You have a lot of safety, concerns as well. You can't just trust, random people showing up to a match with a gun, kind of running and gunning style. So it's a lot to consider. I would love to do it. If there was the right person with the right amount of land in the Kansas City area that wanted to have some type of old bolt action run and gun style competitions, send me a message. I would love to make something like that happen. I'd love to be able to record it and have that on the channel for you guys to watch as running a bolt action through a competition. Like I really loved it when InRange did that back in the day. When Carl and Ian would run bolt actions fairly often in those competitions. So I'd love to be able to do that again. I'm not big into two gun. I'm not that big into pistols. I'd mostly like to focus on the rifle aspect of it. But man, I'd love to do it. I just need the right land and opportunity. 3E asks, 100 years from now, what will be the hottest Milsurp weapon that regular guys like us will collect? In the next 100 years, so we're assuming that people are still going to be able to own guns in 100 years. And, because, there's only more and more restrictions going on all the time. So let's say worst case scenario, you could only own bolt actions in 100 years and there's no more world wars. So I think the latest World War overshadows the previous one. So World War II overshadows World War I. So World War I stuff, for a lot of people, is a little less collectible than World War II stuff. World War II stuff kind of just brings primo prices usually at auctions and stuff like that. Not saying World War I stuff isn't cool or whatever. I like it too. But I think stuff from the latest World War, if there just happens to be one in the next 100 years, that'll bring primo prices. But then again, I doubt there'll be that many bolt actions in the next one to be surplused out there. So maybe if I had to gamble right now, not knowing what the next war is going to be, I would say probably just German bolt actions, German World War II bolt actions, and maybe even Imperial German bolt actions. I think would be I think it's kind of one of the hottest things right now, and I would say in 100 years they might still be the hottest one to collect. Everything going its way. If there's some miraculous change in laws when us peasants can own machine guns and whatnot, maybe it'll be the next great whiz bang that gets invented. But that's a tough one. It's a good question. Heine Sauerkraut asks, which of your Milsurps rifle and handgun surprised you the most after you handled and shot it the first time, as well as negative or positive experience? I would say the handgun that surprised me the most was this FN 1922 here. This is a German occupation gun. It surprised me the most because of how snappy the recoil was. I shot it on the same day that I shot a bunch of 32 pistols here, and the 1922 just seemed to be the snappiest, have the most recoil of all of them. It was really surprising. The gun that surprised me the most, I think, was probably my SVT-40 here. I was surprised by how unreliable it was. There's just some weird malfunctions that have just happened over the years shooting this gun. And also how inaccurate it was. So this is just my example. I'm not saying all of them are, but I was out in the desert, out in Utah, and I was shooting a plate that was, you know, probably a couple hundred meters away, and I was hitting it very consistently with other Milsurps like my K31. And when I took the SVT and started shooting it, I'm just shooting surplus, you know, 7.62 out of it. I mean, I was hitting it like 1 out of every 10 times, something like that. It just seemed really inaccurate. It's weird. I did some reading, and apparently these guns do have a little bit of accuracy issues. So it's not like super uncommon with them, I've heard, but that's probably my biggest like negative experience I've had with the rifle is the SVT. Biggest surprise positively is with the G41. Like I just was really surprised at how pleasantly like shooting the G41 was, like how just light recoiling the gun felt. My wife shot this no problem. Because I mean, typically 8mm it beats you up a little bit. Like you shoot it out of a K90K or something, you know, you feel the oomph behind the cartridge. But it just pretty soft shooting with the G41. So that's probably my biggest surprise positively with the rifle. Randon Wilston asks, I recently picked up an all-matching duffel cut K98. I think I'll leave it that way. I also have a duffel cut Carcano I repaired myself in the past. How do you feel about duffel cut rifles, and would you repair any you come across? I had a duffel cut Danish Krag that was pretty cool. I like duffel cuts personally. I think that's like the closest you can come to guaranteeing that rifle was a bring back. You know, if you have like a duffel cut, you know, Gewehr 98 or something, you know, probably a doughboy brought that back to the U.S. And I think it adds pretty neat history that way. You know, as long as the duffel cut you can tell is old. You know, it's not like a recent cut. Yeah, you definitely need to repair them. There's just no way around it. You got to repair the stock. You can't let it just, you know, fall off or flop around or something like that. So it needs to be well done. Mark at Anvil did a really good job repairing a duffel cut stock in one of his videos. So check that video out if you want to see like the best way to do it probably. You know what, and as far as your duffel cut Carcano, I think that's really cool because a lot of Carcanos are brought in very recently, like my Carcano right there. You know, a lot of these recent imports like that, they're less cool than an actual original one with no import marks that was brought back by a GI. That's cool. That's got some cool history to it. So personally, I would prefer a duffel cut Carcano to a newly imported Carcano. So yeah, I think they're cool. Yeah, you should definitely repair your duffel cut K98. I think it's not going to detract in value. It's already cut. I think just, you know, fixing it is probably going to increase value if nothing else. Kelly asks, what is your favorite stupid/ridiculous feature on a military rifle? Example, Type 99 AA sights, coffee grinder sharps, Galil bottle opener, etc. I mean, that's a good one. You know, the AA sights on the Type 99, it's ridiculous and it's fantastic. And it was one of the things that I definitely wanted on a Type 99 when I bought one. You know, that one has it, so it's pretty ridiculous. That's up there. Probably my favorite one though is what I alluded to before with the G41M. You know, this is a W, but the bolt action, you know, the bolt handle on a semi-automatic, I think is pretty ridiculous, probably stupid, and I think that's probably my favorite dumb, stupid, ridiculous feature on a Milsurp ever is making a semi-automatic bolt action. That's it. Yeah, thanks so much for asking your questions, guys. I appreciate all the Patreon questions that I got. Appreciate all your support. Thanks so much for subscribing and wanting to watch me for whatever reason. You guys are great. 20,000. I can't believe it. I couldn't believe that. I mean, a couple of years back, I remember when I hit 1,000 subscribers. I remember being just ecstatic at 1,000 subscribers. So like now it's just, I feel a little numb to it. It's pretty crazy. But thanks so much for you guys for making that possible. If you like Q&As, let me know in the comments if you want me to do this more often. That's the only way I know how to do stuff. So let me know if you like Q&As, and I'll do more in the future. Let me know if you don't like them, and I won't do more in the future either. So thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.